Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Nick, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about what's more important, overall height or overall space. But before we get in the video, go ahead and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Give this video a big thumbs up and share it with your friends so we can get more people on the channel. It's really good to see it growing and everything. So the first thing I want to jump into is what is the minimum requirements for an adult crested gecko? Because I think it's important to set a baseline when you're talking about space for these guys. So typically, the minimum for an adult crested gecko that most people in the hobby agree with is an 18 by 18 by 24 tall, right? And that comes out to be about 29 gallons or so, close to 30, somewhere in there. So about 30 gallons is what we've decided is about the minimum for an adult crested gecko. You can always go bigger than that, but minimum is about 30 gallons. What I want to do, for instance, is let's take a 40-gallon tank. And a 40-gallon tank, like an Exoterra front opening one, is going to be 18 deep by 18 high by 36 long. So that's 40 gallons. That's 10 more gallons. So my question to you guys, and comment down below right now, which is better? A 30-gallon tall tank or a 40-gallon wide tank? Okay, now that you've commented, I'm going to give my opinion on it. I don't see anything wrong with using a 40-gallon long tank. And it's nice too, because the big thing is a lot of people say, well, take that 40-gallon, turn it on its side. Now the only problem with that is if you need any external heating at all, you're not going to be able to do it with a conversion kit. And it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to do it to provide proper ambient temperature other than putting a space heater in. Heat pads get way too hot in one spot before they really start warming up the ambient temperatures, and you can't really put a CHE or a ceramic heat emitter, you can't really put that on with a conversion kit. So if you need external heat and you have to pick between the two, there's nothing wrong with a 40-gallon tank for an adult. While it isn't as high, you're only giving up 6 inches. And in the wild, these guys, most studies kind of indicate that they really only hang like 10 to 15 foot off the ground, really not too tall for a crazy, like, arboreal. Like everyone says they're arboreal, but they're more semi-arboreal in reality. And they're, even at night, you'll find them hunting on the ground because they eat off the ground. That's where they go and they find bugs, first off. And most importantly, their main diet in the wild is rotten fruit. Rotten fruit doesn't grow in trees. It falls from trees and then begins to rot for the most part. So most of their food is really on the ground under a tree. So they kind of have to be on the ground a lot more than you would typically think. It's more semi-arboreal than just up, you know, way up in the trees, jumping from tree limb to tree limb. When you're deciding between a taller tank and a 40-gallon long tank or anything that you want to put your gecko in, the most important things to every crested gecko owner should be making sure that your gecko has enough foliage to feel safe, enough hiding spots where your gecko can pick and choose where he or she wants to go sleep for the night, and making them feel safe enough that they're going to want to eat in their enclosure, they're going to want to run around in their enclosure, they want to hunt in their enclosure. A crested gecko feeling safe is a crested gecko that will move all around its tank. That's a good sign. If your gecko's just hanging out in one spot all day and all night, that's not a good sign, and that means that you probably need to bump up your foliage or something's going on. But that's the first most important thing that every crested gecko owner should really strive for, is make sure that their gecko is happy in its tank. The second thing is exercise. It's important that these guys can really move around and get around and all that, and overall a 40-gallon tank is bigger than a 30-gallon tank. And size requirements, you know, if you just set size requirements aside, 40 gallons bigger. So in theory, in theory, a 40-gallon tank will offer more exercise and more ability to roam around. Now, if you do go with a 40-gallon breeder, which there are a lot of people who do keep their crested geckos like that and do just fine, across that top layer, just make sure you provide like some vines and some other things that makes it easier for your gecko to get laterally, because you're already dealing with more lateral anyway. And in those 18 by 18 by 24s, it's easier to build vertically than it is to build laterally because there's not so much space. So it's all about optimizing your space for the sake of the crested gecko. Alright, so with all that said, if you want to do a tank, I think that the minimum tank height that it should be is probably like 15 inches for an adult. And then you can go as long as you want. I mean, you can even say 18 inches or something like that. that is all good, and as long as you're providing as much gallons as you can, like a crested gecko in a 55-gallon long tank is going to have more space and more opportunity to do fun little crested gecko things than a gecko in 18 by 18 by 24. And that's just a fact. Even though it's like, oh, well, they need arboreal and they need more long than tall. Crested geckos will move all over their tank. And this is it is somewhat of a myth that everything has to be super tall and like these guys love to climb up and down. They like to go everywhere. They're little geckos. Like they want to be everywhere and anywhere. So just remember that, and don't just limit yourself to the standard 18 by 18 by 24. If you want to put your gecko in a 75-gallon tank, go for it. And the beautiful part about that, like I said earlier, is you can put more heating on top with a ceramic heat emitter. That's going to raise the overall ambient temperature of that tank. And that's what we know is better for crested geckos overall, is proper ambient temperatures and not just one hot spot per se. You know, it's good temperature gradient. So just remember that whenever you're deciding what size tank you want to go in. And next time you're in a Facebook group, don't crucify somebody because they have their gecko in a 20-gallon long. It's really not the end of the world, especially for a growing crested gecko. All right, guys. Well, that is the video. I hope you did enjoy it. Comment down below what you keep your crested geckos in, and if you've kept your crested gecko in a long tank instead of a tall tank, and just tell us how your experience was. But until next time, go ahead, like, subscribe, and stay safe and stay positive, guys.